behind the beloved Brooklyn-based sitcom lurked some truly bizarre secrets that would shock even the most devoted fans. From a child star's traumatic puberty crisis that nearly destroyed the show to a 7-minute theme song creation story and strange billing decisions that defied Hollywood logic, Everybody Hates Chris harbored mysteries that were anything but typical sitcom fare. These jaw-dropping revelations about the show's production, casting disasters, and real-life inspirations will completely change how you view this comedy classic. Fact 1. Tyler Williams' voice crisis nearly killed the show. The beloved sitcom Everybody Hates Chris came to an abrupt end after 4 seasons. But not because of low ratings or network politics. It ended because the lead actor literally grew out of his role. Tyler James Williams, who played the teenage version of Chris Rock, hit puberty during production, and his changing voice created an impossible problem that the show simply couldn't solve. When the series began in 2005, Williams was just 13 years old, with a young, high-pitched voice that worked perfectly for the character of an awkward teenager navigating life in 1980s Brooklyn. The show's format relied heavily on Chris Rock's distinctive adult voice, providing narration as the older version of Chris looking back on his childhood experiences. This created a specific sound dynamic that was essential to the show's storytelling approach. However, as Williams entered his mid-teens during the 2nd and 3rd seasons, his voice began dropping dramatically due to natural puberty. According to Williams himself, his voice was cracking non-stop during seasons 2 and 3, which created increasingly noticeable continuity issues. The contrast between Williams' deepening teenage voice and Chris Rock's higher, more nasal adult voice became so pronounced that it threatened the show's believability. The production team found themselves in an unprecedented situation during the 2007 to 2008 writers' strike. Williams' voice had dropped so significantly that it actually scared the show's production team, as he later revealed in interviews. The young actor was growing taller, and his voice was becoming deeper by the day, making it impossible to maintain the illusion that this was the same character who would eventually grow up to sound like Chris Rock. This biological reality forced Chris Rock and the creators to make the difficult decision to end the series after the 4th season in 2009. Rather than recast the lead role or try to work around the voice change, they chose to conclude the story naturally, with the final episode showing Chris getting his GED and transitioning into adulthood, a perfect stopping point that aligned with Williams' actual maturation. Fact 2. Terry Crews got top billing over the actual star. In one of Hollywood's strangest casting credit decisions, Terry Crews received top billing on Everybody Hates Chris, despite the fact that Tyler James Williams was clearly the main character, and the show literally had his character's name in the title. This unusual arrangement became even more puzzling when you consider that Tichina Arnold, who played Chris's mother Rochelle, was actually more famous and established than Crews when the show premiered in 2005. At the time the series began, Terry Crews was primarily known for playing intimidating, muscle-bound characters in action movies and comedies like White Chicks and Friday After Next. His casting as Julius, the gentle and penny-pinching father, was already considered unusual because it went completely against his typical scary black man persona from previous roles. However, giving him top billing over the actual star of the show was an even more unexpected decision by the network and producers. Meanwhile, Tichina Arnold had already established herself as a television star through her memorable role as Pam on the hit sitcom Martin, which ran throughout the 1990s. She was a recognizable face to television audiences and had proven her ability to carry comedy scenes. Yet she was listed after Crews in the opening credits despite having more television experience and name recognition. The most unusual part of this billing arrangement was how Tyler James Williams, the actor who portrayed the title character and appeared in virtually every scene of every episode, received what's called a special "and" credit at the end of the main cast listing. This type of credit is typically reserved for guest stars or veteran actors who want their names to stand out separately from the main cast, not for the lead actor of the entire series. This billing displacement created a situation where viewers watching the opening credits might assume that Terry Crews was the main character, when in reality the show focused almost entirely on William's character navigating his teenage years in Brooklyn. The decision remains one of the more puzzling examples of how Hollywood sometimes handles actor credits in ways that don't reflect the actual importance of roles within a production. Fact 3. Tichina Arnold wrote the theme song in 7 minutes. Most fans of Everybody Hates Chris recognize the catchy "Everybody Hates Chris" refrain that plays during transitions and at the end of episodes, but they have no idea that this musical hook came from a complete theme song that actress Tichina Arnold wrote and recorded in just 7 minutes. Arnold, who played Chris's fierce mother Rochelle on the show, took it upon herself to create original music for the series when she learned it had been picked up by the network. When Arnold found out that Everybody Hates Chris was officially going to air, her first thought as a singer and performer was that the show would need a theme song. She later explained in interviews that her first love is singing, and she immediately thought to herself, "Wow, they're going to need a theme song." Without waiting for the producers to ask or commission anything, Arnold called up 2 of her friends and headed to a recording studio in New York to create something special for the series. The entire creative process happened incredibly quickly, with Arnold writing the complete song in just 7 minutes and then recording it with her friends providing background vocals. The full version included verses that told a story about Chris being misunderstood and how everyone thinks he's up to no good, with the now familiar "Everybody Hates Chris" line serving as the main chorus hook that tied everything together. When Arnold presented her complete composition to the show's creators, Chris Rock and Ali Leroy, they loved the energy and catchiness of her work, but decided they already had other musical ideas in mind for the opening sequence. Instead of using Arnold's full song as the main theme, they chose to extract just the "Everybody Hates Chris" hook and incorporate it into the show's background music during scene transitions and commercial breaks. Arnold was gracious about the decision and expressed happiness that the producers kept at least part of her creative contribution, saying, "They kept the hook of the theme song. They didn't keep the whole thing, but I'm happy that kept something." Her spontaneous 7-minute creation became one of the most memorable musical elements of the entire series. Fact 4. The show was filmed on fake Brooklyn streets. Despite being authentically set in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn and drawing directly from Chris Rock's real childhood experiences in that area, the entire series, Everybody Hates Chris, was actually filmed thousands of miles away on a constructed movie set in Los Angeles. The brownstone-lined streets that viewers saw as Chris's neighborhood were completely artificial facades built on Paramount Studios' backlot, creating an elaborate illusion that fooled audiences for 4 seasons. The show's producers made the decision to shoot on Paramount's specially designed brownstone street set rather than filming on location in the actual Bedford-Stuyvesant area, where Chris Rock grew up during 1980s. This particular backlot set was part of Paramount's collection of fake New York City neighborhoods, which also included constructed versions of Little Italy, Chinatown, and the Upper East Side, all designed to help productions avoid the expense and logistical challenges of filming in the real New York. What made this choice particularly interesting was how different the artificial Brooklyn looked from the genuine neighborhood that inspired it. The Paramount brownstones were built as Hollywood facades, meaning they were essentially just front walls with nothing behind them, designed primarily to look good on camera rather than to accurately represent the architectural details and lived-in character of real Bedford-Stuyvesant buildings. The set's clean, movie-perfect appearance contrasted sharply with the grittier, more authentic atmosphere of the actual Brooklyn neighborhood where the Rock family lived. The same fake Brooklyn street set was used for multiple other productions during the same time period, including movies like Along Came Polly and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which filmed their Brooklyn scenes on the identical constructed blocks. This meant that the specific street where Chris Rock's character supposedly grew up was also serving as the backdrop for romantic comedies and action films that had nothing to do with his story. Even the different schools that Chris attended in the show used the same building filmed from different angles with different signage, further emphasizing how the entire Brooklyn experience was created through movie magic rather than authentic location shooting. Fact 5. Chris Rock initially rejected Tyler Williams for being too likable. When casting began for Everybody Hates Chris, Chris Rock had a very specific vision for the actor who would portray his younger self, and Tyler James Williams almost didn't get the part because he was simply too charming and likable for what Rock had in mind. Rock was genuinely concerned that Williams didn't possess the physical appearance or personality traits of someone that audiences would believably hate, which created an unexpected obstacle during the audition process. The entire premise of the show was built around the idea that Chris was an unlucky, awkward teenager who seemed to attract trouble and dislike from nearly everyone around him, from school bullies to neighborhood kids to even some family members. Rock needed an actor who could convincingly portray this perpetually downtrodden character while still making audiences want to root for him, but he worried that Williams was too naturally appealing to pull off the role effectively. During the casting process, Rock found himself in the unusual position of being hesitant about an actor because he was too good at being likable rather than not good enough. Williams had an endearing quality and natural charisma that made people want to be around him, which was exactly the opposite of what the character of young Chris Rock was supposed to represent. Rock felt that Williams didn't have the look of someone that everyone hates and was concerned that this fundamental mismatch would undermine the show's central concept. However, Williams' acting ability and his genuine talent for comedy eventually won Rock over despite these initial concerns. The young actor's performance during auditions demonstrated that he could capture the essence of the character's struggles and social awkwardness, even while maintaining his natural appeal. Rock came to realize that Williams' endearing qualities would actually help audiences connect with the character and feel sympathy for his constant misfortunes. This casting decision proved to be absolutely correct, as Williams' likable personality became one of the show's greatest strengths, allowing viewers to genuinely care about Chris's journey while still finding humor in his endless string of bad luck and social disasters throughout his teenage years in Brooklyn. Fact 6. The DVD releases destroyed the original music. One of the most disappointing aspects of owning Everybody Hates Chris on DVD is that the music you hear is completely different from what aired on television, fundamentally changing the viewing experience that made the show so memorable during its original run. All of the home video releases replaced the show's carefully chosen licensed music with generic, studio-made compositions that sound suspiciously similar to the original songs, but lack the authentic feel and cultural significance of the real tracks. During its original broadcast from 2005 to 2009, Everybody Hates Chris featured an incredible soundtrack of classic hip-hop, R&B, and pop songs from the 1980s that perfectly captured the time period and added authentic atmosphere to Chris's coming-of-age story. These songs weren't just background music but were integral to establishing the show's setting and helping viewers connect with the cultural world that Chris Rock grew up in during that era. However, when it came time to release the series on DVD, the cost of securing music licensing rights for home video distribution proved to be prohibitively expensive for the studio. Rather than pay the substantial fees required to include artists like Grandmaster Flash, Billy Ocean, and other iconic performers whose music appeared in the original episodes, the producers made the decision to replace all of the licensed tracks with cheaper, generic alternatives that they created in-house. The result was a series of replacement songs that were clearly designed to sound similar to the originals, but fell far short of capturing their impact and authenticity. Fans who purchased the DVDs expecting to relive their favorite moments from the show found themselves watching scenes with completely different musical backgrounds that often felt awkward and out of place compared to what they remembered from television. This music replacement issue extended beyond just the DVD releases and affected most streaming platforms as well, including early versions on Paramount+, where entire scenes were edited out if they contained too much licensed music to replace effectively. The only way to experience Everybody Hates Chris with its original soundtrack intact became watching reruns on television networks that still had the rights to air the episodes as they were originally produced. Fact 7. Chris Rock condensed 7 siblings into 2. While viewers of Everybody Hates Chris got to know the fictional Rock family with just 3 children, the real Chris Rock actually grew up in a much larger household, with 7 siblings, making his actual family nearly 3 times bigger than what appeared on television. Rock made the deliberate creative decision to drastically reduce his family size for the show because he realized that trying to include all of his real brothers and sister would have created an unmanageable cast that would be impossible to develop properly within the constraints of a 30-minute sitcom. In reality, Chris Rock was the eldest of 8 children in total, with 6 younger brothers named Tony, Kenny, Jordan, Andre, Brian, and Charles, plus 1 younger sister named Andy. This massive family dynamic meant that the real Rock household was constantly bustling with activity, sibling rivalries, and the kind of chaos that comes with so many children living under one roof, with parents who were already struggling to make ends meet in Bedford-Stuyvesant during the 1980s. However, when Rock and his co-creator Ali Leroy began developing the television series, they quickly realized that accurately representing such a large family would present serious storytelling challenges. Rock explained in interviews that they would have had to combine people to make the show work effectively, because having 8 children as regular characters would have meant that most of them wouldn't get enough screen time or character development to make audiences care about them. Instead of trying to juggle so many siblings, Rock chose to condense the personalities and characteristics of his real brothers and sister into just 2 fictional siblings, Drew and Tanya. The character of Drew, played by Tequan Richmond, was specifically based on Rock's brother Tony, who was known for being cooler and more popular than Chris during their childhood. Tony Rock even appeared on the show playing a different character, Uncle Ryan, creating the amusing situation where he portrayed a fictional relative while his real-life personality inspired a completely different character. This creative choice allowed the show to focus more deeply on the family relationships that mattered most to the central storylines, while still capturing the essence of growing up in a large, chaotic household. Fact 8. A producer told Tyler Williams he'd never work again. During the production of Everybody Hates Chris, Tyler James Williams experienced what he later described as a deeply traumatic moment when an unnamed producer on the show made a cruel and unprofessional comment that would stick with the young actor for years. In a shocking display of insensitivity, this producer told Williams directly that he would never see you as anything else and you'll probably never work again after the series ended, essentially telling a teenage actor that his career would be over once the show concluded. Williams was just a child when he landed the lead role on Everybody Hates Chris, starting the series at age 13 and growing up entirely in the public eye during the show's 4-season run, from 2005 to 2009. The experience of being a young actor on a successful television series was already challenging enough, as Williams had to balance the normal struggles of adolescence with the pressures of performing on a hit show while millions of viewers watched him mature on screen. The producer's harsh prediction came at a time when Williams was already dealing with the difficulties of growing up in the entertainment industry, including the physical changes of puberty that were actually threatening the show's continuity. Williams later revealed in a 2023 interview with GQ magazine that the comment left him stunned, saying, "I was like, holy shit, you really just looked at me and said that." The casual cruelty of the statement, delivered by someone in a position of authority on the show, made it particularly hurtful and memorable. This experience contributed to what Williams described as the overall traumatic nature of his time on the series, which included not only the pressure of carrying a television show as a teenager, but also dealing with the awkwardness of going through puberty while being filmed. Williams noted that the time this was happening was the same time the internet was becoming more ingrained in the industry, meaning that his most awkward developmental years were being documented and discussed online by viewers and critics. The producer's prediction proved to be completely wrong, as Williams went on to have a successful career that included roles in major productions and eventually earned him a Golden Globe Award for his performance in Abbott Elementary. Fact 9. The show moved Chris Rock's childhood to the wrong decade. Although Everybody Hates Chris was presented as an autobiographical look at Chris Rock's teenage years, the show actually moved his entire childhood experience forward by about a decade for creative and commercial reasons. Rock was born in 1965, which means his actual teenage years took place from 1978 to 1984, firmly placing his real adolescence in the late 1970s and early 80s, rather than the mid to late 1980s setting that viewers saw on television. When Rock and his co-creator Ali Leroy were developing the series, they made the conscious decision to shift the timeline forward because Rock felt that 1970s culture had already been explored and parodied extensively by other television shows and movies. The most obvious example was That 70s Show, which had been running on Fox since 1998 and had already mined the decade for its fashion, music, and cultural references in ways that Rock felt would make his own show seem repetitive or unoriginal. By moving his childhood experiences to the 1980s, Rock was able to tap into a different set of cultural touchstones that hadn't been as thoroughly explored in popular media at the time the show premiered in 2005. The 1980s setting allowed the show to feature the music, fashion, technology, and social issues of that decade, creating a distinct atmosphere that felt fresh and nostalgic, without directly competing with other period comedies that were already on the air. This timeline shift also had practical benefits for the show's storytelling, as the 1980s provided a rich backdrop of pop culture references, from early hip-hop music to the rise of video games and cable television, that helped establish the world Chris was growing up in. The decade also coincided with significant changes in urban America, particularly in neighborhoods like Bedford-Stuyvesant, that added authenticity to the family's struggles and aspirations. Despite this temporal adjustment, Rock maintained that the essential experiences and family dynamics portrayed in the show remained true to his actual childhood, even if they were dressed up in the wrong decade's clothing and accompanied by music from a slightly later era. Fact 10. Tyler Williams' real brothers played his TV family. In a heartwarming example of keeping things in the family, Tyler James Williams' actual younger brothers made special appearances on Everybody Hates Chris, playing younger versions of the main characters in flashback sequences that required child actors who were even smaller than the regular cast. Tylen Jacob Williams and Tyrell Jackson Williams, Tyler's real-life siblings, were cast as Little Chris and Baby Drew respectively, creating the unique situation where biological brothers portrayed fictional brothers on television. The Williams family had a strong connection to the entertainment industry even before Tyler landed his breakout role on the show, with their mother Angela Williams working as a singer and songwriter, while their father served as a police sergeant. This artistic background meant that all three Williams boys were comfortable in front of cameras and had some experience with performing, making them natural choices when the show needed younger actors for specific storylines. Tylen Jacob Williams, who played the younger version of Tyler's character Chris, appeared in episodes that showed flashbacks to Chris's earlier childhood experiences, particularly in Everybody Hates Halloween, where viewers got to see what the character was like at an even more innocent age. Meanwhile, Tyrell Jackson Williams took on the role of Baby Drew in Everybody Hates Greg, portraying the infant version of Chris's younger brother during family memory sequences. Having real siblings play fictional siblings added an authentic family dynamic to these flashback scenes that would have been difficult to achieve with unrelated child actors. The natural chemistry and genuine resemblance between the Williams brothers helped maintain the show's believability during these glimpses into the character's past, while also providing Tyler with the comfort of working alongside family members during what could have been challenging emotional scenes. Both of Tyler's younger brothers went on to have their own successful acting careers after their appearances on Everybody Hates Chris, with Tyrell Jackson Williams becoming particularly well known for his starring role in the Disney Channel series Lab Rats, proving that talent definitely ran in the Williams family and that their early experience on their brother's show helped launch their own entertainment careers. Fact 11. The father character's death date was eerily prophetic. One of the most unsettling coincidences surrounding Everybody Hates Chris involves the timing of the show's conclusion and a tragic event from Chris Rock's real life that occurred decades earlier. Chris Rock's actual father, Julius Rock, died in 1988 following complications from ulcer surgery, and this death occurred exactly 1 year after the events depicted in the show's final episode, which was set in 1987 when Chris gets his GED and transitions into adulthood. The show's timeline placed Chris at age 17 during the series finale, which aired in 2009 but depicted events from 1987 according to the show's internal chronology. This meant that if the series had continued for another season, the storyline would have naturally progressed into 1988, the exact year that Julius Rock passed away in real life. The eerie precision of this timing has led some fans to develop conspiracy theories about whether the show's ending was deliberately planned to avoid depicting or dealing with this painful period in Rock's life. Julius Rock died at age 56 after what should have been routine ulcer surgery, leaving behind his wife Rosalie and their 8 children, including 23-year-old Chris, who was just beginning to establish himself in stand-up comedy. The loss had a profound impact on Rock's perspective on life and comedy, with a comedian later saying that losing his father taught him that everything except death works itself out and that people shouldn't take things too seriously. During the show's run, there were occasional references in Chris Rock's narration that suggested the father character was no longer alive in the present day, but the series never directly addressed Julius's death or showed it happening on screen. The show's abrupt conclusion right before reaching 1988 has fueled speculation among fans that Rock deliberately chose to end the series rather than confront the traumatic events of that year, even in fictional form. This timing coincidence becomes even more poignant when considering that the show was meant to be a loving tribute to Rock's family and childhood, making the prospect of depicting his father's death particularly difficult for both creative and emotional reasons. Fact 12. Tony Rock played his own uncle on the show. In one of the most amusing examples of art imitating life on Everybody Hates Chris, Chris Rock's real-life younger brother Tony Rock appeared on the show as a recurring character named Uncle Ryan, creating the wonderfully bizarre situation where an actual family member portrayed a fictional relative of himself. This casting decision meant that Tony Rock was essentially playing a made-up version of an uncle, while simultaneously being the real-life brother of the person whose childhood the show was depicting. Tony Rock, who was born in 1974 and had already established himself as a stand-up comedian and actor by the time Everybody Hates Chris premiered, brought his natural comedic timing and genuine family chemistry to the role of Uncle Ryan. The character appeared in multiple episodes throughout the series, particularly during the later seasons from 2008 to 2009, and served as a fun-loving, slightly irresponsible adult figure who would occasionally visit the Rock family and cause mild chaos with his carefree attitude. What made this casting choice particularly entertaining was that while Tony Rock was playing Uncle Ryan on screen, his real personality and characteristics were actually being used as the inspiration for the completely different character of Drew, Chris's younger brother, in the show. Chris Rock had specifically stated that the fictional Drew character was loosely based on Tony's real-life personality, describing how Tony was always cooler and more popular than Chris during their actual childhood in Bedford-Stuyvesant. This created a delightfully confusing family tree where Tony Rock, the real person, inspired Drew Rock, the fictional character, while simultaneously portraying Uncle Ryan, the fictional uncle, all within a show about his real brother Chris's childhood experiences. The arrangement allowed Tony to showcase his acting abilities while maintaining a connection to the family project, and his natural rapport with the rest of the cast helped make Uncle Ryan's appearances feel authentic and lived in. Tony Rock's involvement in the show represented the broader way that Everybody Hates Chris became a true family affair, with multiple members of the Rock clan contributing to the series in various capacities both in front of and behind the camera. Fact 13. Drew was only 3 weeks younger than Chris in real life. One of the most surprising casting details about Everybody Hates Chris is that Taquan Richmond, who played Chris's younger brother Drew throughout the entire series, was actually born only 3 weeks after Tyler James Williams in real life, making their actual age difference so minimal that it was practically non-existent. This meant that two actors who were essentially the same age spent 4 seasons convincingly portraying siblings with a supposed 2-year age gap between their characters. Tyler James Williams was born on October 9, 1992, while Taquan Richmond followed just 21 days later on October 30th of the same year, creating one of the smallest age differences between actors playing siblings in television history. Despite this incredibly close birth timing, Richmond successfully portrayed a character who was meant to be significantly younger than Williams' Chris, and audiences never questioned the believability of their sibling relationship or the age dynamic between them. The casting choice becomes even more remarkable when you consider that Drew's character was written to be not only younger than Chris, but also bigger, more athletic, more popular, and generally more successful in social situations. Richmond had to convincingly portray all of these characteristics while being essentially the same age as his on-screen older brother, requiring him to adopt a different physical presence and personality that would make viewers believe he was the younger sibling, despite his actual maturity level. This casting decision represents an excellent example of how acting ability and screen chemistry can override real-life logistics in television production. The producers clearly prioritized finding actors who could embody the characters' personalities and relationships rather than focusing strictly on chronological age matching, and both Williams and Richmond were skilled enough performers to make the fictional age gap feel natural and believable. The success of their on-screen brotherhood also demonstrates how effective casting directors can be at recognizing potential chemistry between actors, as Williams and Richmond developed a convincing sibling dynamic that helped ground the show's family relationships despite the unusual real-world age situation that existed behind the scenes throughout the entire production. Fact 14. The schools were named after mafia movies. The writers of Everybody Hates Chris had a lot of fun creating the names for the various schools that appeared throughout the series, drawing inspiration from an eclectic mix of pop culture references that ranged from classic mafia films to blaxploitation movies and even 1970s sitcoms. The most prominent example was Chris's junior high school, which was called Corleone Junior High, a clear reference to the powerful crime family from the Godfather movie series that dominated organized crime cinema during the 1970s. The choice to name Chris's school after the Corleone family was particularly fitting, given that the show depicted Chris attending a predominantly white school in what was described as an Italian neighborhood, making the mafia movie reference both culturally appropriate and darkly humorous. The writers were essentially suggesting that Chris was entering territory that was just as dangerous and unwelcoming as anything depicted in Francis Ford Coppola's crime epics, except instead of dealing with violent mobsters, Chris had to navigate teenage bullies and prejudiced teachers. However, the Corleone reference was just the beginning of the show's creative school naming convention, as other educational institutions mentioned throughout the series continued this pattern of pop culture homages. The elementary school was called Dolmite Elementary, named after the 1970s blaxploitation character created by comedian Rudy Ray Moore, who was known for his outrageous persona and street-smart attitude that influenced later comedians, including Chris Rock himself. The show also featured Lamont Sanford Junior High, which referenced the character of Lamont Sanford from the classic sitcom Sanford and Son, where Red Fox played a junk dealer whose long-suffering son Lamont constantly tried to improve their family's circumstances. Additionally, there was Tartaglia High School, which took its name from another crime family that appeared as rivals to the Corleones in the Godfather films. This naming strategy created a surreal educational landscape, where Chris's academic journey took him through institutions that celebrated everything from Italian-American crime dramas to African-American comedy legends reflecting the show's own blend of different cultural influences and entertainment traditions that shaped Chris Rock's comedic worldview. Fact 15. A sound mixer's death became an on-screen memorial. In a touching tribute that highlighted the close-knit nature of television production crews, the episode "Everybody Hates a Part-Time Job" from the show's second season carried a special dedication to Ray Simozinski, the series' sound mixer who had passed away unexpectedly on Christmas Day in 2005. The timing of his death made the memorial particularly poignant, as Simozinski died just 15 days before the episode aired on January 9, 2006, meaning the production team had to quickly add the dedication during the final stages of post-production. Ray Simozinski was an essential but often unrecognized member of the Everybody Hates Chris crew, responsible for capturing and mixing all of the dialogue, sound effects, and ambient audio that viewers heard during each episode. Sound mixers work behind the scenes to ensure that every word spoken by the actors comes through clearly, and that all the background noises, from footsteps to door slams, sound natural and help create the realistic atmosphere of each scene. The decision to dedicate an entire episode to Simozinski demonstrated how much the cast and crew valued the contributions of every team member, regardless of whether their work was visible on screen or happened behind the cameras. Television productions typically reserve on-screen dedications for major stars, directors, or producers, making this tribute to a crew member particularly meaningful and unusual within the industry. The episode that carried his memorial was especially appropriate, as Everybody Hates a Part-Time Job dealt with themes of hard work and the value of dedicated employees, which reflected Simozinski's own professional commitment to the series. The show's creators and producers wanted to ensure that his contributions to the series would be remembered by the audience, even though most viewers would never have known his name or understood the technical expertise required for his job. This memorial represents one of the more touching behind-the-scenes stories from Everybody Hates Chris, showing how the fictional Rock family's values of loyalty and appreciation for hard work extended to the real-life production family that brought their stories to television screens across the country.